Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. In this show, we cover a broad range of topics that both cater to CRE newcomers and industry leaders alike. I'm your host, Jessica LaRusso, Director of Sales, and today we are thrilled to sit down with Tyler Cauble, President and founder of the Cobble Group. Before we dive in, a little bit about our guest. Tyler Cauble is a native Nashvilleian that has not only been a witness to the city's tremendous growth, but has also played a key role in it through his developments, renovation projects, and volunteer work through the community. His commercial real estate career began in the fall of 2013 as the in-house leasing agent for a Nashville development firm. After stabilizing the company's shopping center and office assets, Cobble began taking on third-party work and putting together his first development deal, 42 for-sale townhomes in Bellevue. Then, in February 2018, Tyler launched his best-selling book, Open for Business, The Insider's Guide to Leasing Commercial Real Estate, and founded the East Nashville-based commercial real estate brokerage, the Cobble Group. Later that year, he and his partners founded Parasol Property Management to serve the management needs of his investment clients. Since 2019, Cobble has been raising capital for value-add investments in the greater Nashville area, providing high-quality commercial space at affordable prices, a much-needed solution for Nashville's entrepreneurial community. Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Jessica, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the introduction. That was pretty great.
We're very, very excited to have you. I know we just covered a lot about your background, but as we get started, I'd love to really briefly learn about your career path and some lessons that you learned along the way. So maybe we can start at the very beginning. So how did you get your start in commercial real estate?
Yeah, so it goes back to the summer that I graduated from high school. I was actually, I sold Cutco knives of all things. So learned sales really well. Was the top rep in the Eastern region that summer, made like 30 grand. And I went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I was sitting in classes that I had taken back in 8th and 9th grade, wondering why I was wasting my time, and started daydreaming. And I thought, well, $30,000 in 3 months, that's $120,000 a year if I'm working full time. So I dropped out after my freshman year, moved back to Nashville, and actually got a job offer from a developer that I had sold some knives to for his beach house.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. And so, of course, I didn't understand how difficult it was to get started in commercial real estate at the time because of that. And solely focused on their in-house assets for a couple of years because, back in 2013, market was very different than it is today. And there were a lot of Class B, Class A assets that were just sitting vacant. And so once we stabilized those, I started, developing because I was able to sit in on all of the development meetings every week with the company, which was pretty neat. So I got to learn firsthand how they actually pulled these projects together. So that's kind of what I got the bug for doing my own deals. And as you said, put that 42-unit townhome development together and then launched the Cobble Group and started doing my own projects shortly thereafter.
That's incredible. Wow. It started so early. In kind of those early years, did you have any moments where you course corrected, maybe, or that you didn't recognize as opportunities?
Yeah. I mean, I started off on the leasing side and, with the direction, I mean, this is my first experience in commercial real estate. I had the direction from the owner of the company. You're just going to work on our deals and you're going to get all these assets leased up. So I was like, okay, that's what I do. And, I'd never really thought about doing third party or working for anybody else, or even realized honestly at the beginning that I could do that. And, for the first couple of years, my income was relatively low because of that. I was now I had, 50,000 square feet of retail and a couple 100,000 square feet of industrial and 57,000 square feet of office space, but that's not enough to really keep you occupied, when you're even if you're signing a lease every month. So very quickly learned, even if I'm going to be working on my own stuff, I've got to go out and find other people to do business with. And so that's how we got into investment sales. And, of course, that led me to the path where I am today, which is being able to do my own investments.
Love that. So kind of piggybacking off of that, can you fill us in on the story of founding the Cobble Group?
Yeah, I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial mindset, and there were a lot of ways that I wanted to innovate how brokerage was done within that company. And the owner didn't care for that. So, I very quickly saw, okay, I mean, there's a ceiling here. If I want to go out and do my own thing, I've got to start my own company. So ended up leaving in February of 2018 to go do that after I launched my book. And it was the best thing that I ever did, because I tripled the amount of business that we did that year, because I was able to implement all of the ideas that I had around brokering. And then, the following year we started buying up office assets, about 4 buildings in 2019, bought a handful more in 2020, and we've kind of been off to the races ever since.
That's incredible. And I know on our prep call, you had mentioned that when you're building, your business or your brand, you're very intentional, right? So when you started the Cobble Group, what intentions, or any of your other businesses for that matter, what are some of the intentions that you have going in, and really how have they guided you, since those starting years?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. One on the marketing side, I wanted to do better marketing, right? I think a lot of commercial real estate brokerages have very boring marketing collateral. It's very corporate. It's not very visually appealing. And I just kind of got the sense from the clientele that I was working with that that's something that's important to them, something that will stand out from the crowd. Same thing on the leasing and the sales side. Being a young and hungry broker, I was willing to go out and knock on doors and cold call to get things done. I feel like a lot of the older guys tend to, put a sign up on the door and wait for a phone call. And so that gave me a cutting edge for sure. And then, the online marketing side, I took a lot of pages out of the residential real estate agents books, because they are really good about online marketing, and most commercial real estate firms are not. And so, we went all in on the Instagram page. I ended up starting a blog, which drives a lot of, you'd be amazed at how much business we get off of Instagram and my website because of the blog. And then we started a YouTube channel in 2020, started our own podcast in 2021. And we get the overwhelming majority of our leads from the digital content that we put out there.
That's really incredible and very unique, right? Given that you were really starting this from your own ideas, were there any challenges that you faced early on when going this more, kind of non-traditional marketing route for commercial real estate?
Yeah, I think anytime you're going to do something that's not the norm, there's going to be a little bit of, kickback and challenges. I mean, the primary challenges were there wasn't a case study on somebody else in commercial real estate doing this. I had plenty in the residential world, but we all know residential buyers are very different than commercial buyers. So, I kind of had to navigate that and figure out what that looked like. And, of course, you get the comments from other brokers like, why are you doing that? You're wasting your time. You're never going to sell, commercial real estate on Instagram. And none of that's true. And I had a gut feeling that it wasn't. And I mean, we've done some pretty major transactions solely because of Instagram and YouTube. So it's been fun to see what can be done when you just go out there and do it.
I love that. So unique. And I'm sure there's a lot of people now emulating you, right? You're kind of trailblazing the way. What would you say are some of your investment principles that guide you or your company, right? And how have those adapted over, recent years and in the current market?
Yeah, I mean, we're hardcore neighborhood investors, right? So there's not a single asset class that I prefer to focus on. Very opportunistic. It's just whatever is within, this radius. Let's go take a look at it. Right. So I like to call myself a lazy investor. I've got the majority of my assets within a 10-minute drive of my office. Nice. So I have no excuse to not drive by them just about every day. And, I learned early on as a broker, like, I don't want to drive 45 minutes to go look at a property. I'm just not going to do it. So I kind of built a lifestyle to where I don't have to do that. We prefer to focus on smaller businesses because there's a huge segment of commercial real estate that chooses to ignore them or just don't find it worth their time. So, a lot of our properties will lease up. We had one deal where we had 6 leases signed before we even, like, the day that we announced it, a year from delivering the property, all 6 leases were signed at 3 times market rate. Wow. Just because we were focusing on this community that's often neglected. So, that to us matters more than anything else. But I mean, I've got a food hall. We're under construction on a hotel right now. We're sitting in one of my office buildings. We've got some retail, industrial. I mean, we'll kind of do anything as long as it's within our neighborhood or at least a neighborhood that we have gotten to know very well. and there's a story to be told about why it's a good investment.
That's awesome. Which neighborhood or submarket are you really targeting? Just for our listeners.
Yeah. So in Nashville, we're focused on East Nashville and Madison, which is just across the river from downtown. And then in Chattanooga, we focus on South Chattanooga.
Thank you for sharing. This is something I love to ask, everyone that comes on the podcast, because it's such unique responses. But do you have any daily habits or practices that really become essential to your career? Can be CRE related, of course, or anything else, something that you do daily?
Ooh, that's interesting. So I don't eat breakfast. I do intermittent fasting. I know that that's probably like, okay, what does that have to do with commercial real estate? But what I have found is that when I eat breakfast in the morning, my body is diverting energy towards digesting food, and I'm just not as quick and sharp. When I'm on an empty stomach throughout the morning, it's some of the most productive hours that I have. I try to get up at 5:30 or 6 just so I have a little bit of time to myself to catch up on emails or just relax, honestly, because, days can get really crazy in this business. I'm a pacer. I cannot sit still when I'm on a phone call. So, it's very common for me to put 10 to 15,000 steps a day in just because I'm on phone calls so much. And I'll go walk around the blocks around my office. So those are probably the habits that I have. It's probably a little bit of a different direction than what you might have thought, but
no, I love that. I actually think we've heard that before. Intermittent fasting gives a lot of energy from what I've heard. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Moving on to kind of our next topic for the day, really something that a lot of our listeners are going to be really excited about, and an up and coming market sector. Want to chat about micro units. So to kick things off, can you fill us in? What are micro units, right? How are they different from your regular commercial buildings?
Yeah, I mean, I just define micro units in a very broad sense, that it's a smaller unit than what you typically see in the market, right? So, the first micro unit project we did, it was a 12,000 square foot office building that we bought and converted from 6 units into 17 units. So we had one office suite upstairs that was 6,035 square feet. And I just didn't see the demand for that in that submarket. I didn't see what tenant was going to lease that, but it was well laid out with a central hallway for us to convert it into essentially executive offices, right? But it's not quite co-working. It's not quite Regus, where it's a regular office building. You don't have front desk. You don't have, this kind of fishbowl feeling that you can get in a lot of co-working spaces. You've got your own private professional office. And we ended up signing we delivered that building after renovating it in January of 2020. So right before the pandemic hit. And we signed 17 office leases by August or September of 2020, and sold the building in October. Wow. So it does really well, because there's, like I said earlier, there's just people don't like to focus on these smaller businesses. And there's a lot of demand out there for them to have the normal professional presence that a lot of these businesses want. We did an outdoor food hall called The Wash here in East Nashville, which is a car wash that we converted each of the bays into micro restaurants and a bar.
That's so cool.
And they're all 380 square feet. Yeah, it was a really fun project. They're all 380 square feet, including the walk-in cooler. So there's no, in-house dining. It's all exterior patio dining. And, that's the deal where we signed 6 leases within 2 weeks of announcing the project at 3 times market rate for restaurants. So there's a lot of pros that come with doing these smaller micro unit deals. I think that especially as rental, construction costs, land costs, rental rates are going up, it's going to be an easier way for landlords to get spaces filled on a monthly basis, because tenants don't look at commercial real estate the same way that we do. They don't look at it on a price per square foot basis. They go, is the all-in monthly cost something I can justify? That's all they care about.
And are you finding most of the tenants for like the Wash project, as an example, are they coming from within the own local market or coming from other areas of Nashville?
We had one tenant that came from Texas, but the overwhelming majority of them are all either startups or they had a food truck or were doing pop-ups before. So we were very intentional not to pick anybody that had a previous restaurant, because it allowed us to create something that had never been done before with some very unique businesses. One thing that I think about all the time, especially in the restaurant industry, with how expensive it is to build out and open up a restaurant. There are so many amazing chefs out there that will never get their concepts out because they don't know how to raise capital.
Right.
They're really good at being an artist in the kitchen, but the capital raising side of it's just not their thing. And often when they do raise capital, they end up losing a majority of the restaurant, or you're basically answering to somebody else.
Right.
Whereas these micro units gave us the opportunity to lease. The average restaurant got open for $30,000. So we were able to pick restaurants based on the food instead of who had the most money.
That's really awesome. What surprised you most about working on these types of deals?
Honestly, I guess just the demand. Before I had done it, we hadn't really seen anything like that done before. And, you would think office space going into the pandemic, that would get crushed. Absolutely not. I mean, in the middle of the pandemic, we signed 17 leases. Same with the food hall. I mean, we signed 6 leases within 2 weeks of announcing it. And so I think it's really the surprise there is the demand. The tenants are out there and they are not getting a product that fits what they want.
That makes a lot of sense. So for our investors out there, obviously pro would be the demand. What would be a con or a challenge, when investing in these types of developments?
For sure. I mean, you're taking risks with, lower credit tenants, right? I mean, they're local groups. There's a lot of landlords out there that only want to deal with regional or national credit tenants. And this is not something that's ever going to replace that, because those are two totally different investments. But, we're having conversations with national multifamily developers about how to incorporate a smaller food hall within their apartment complexes, something that's really a cash flowing amenity. And in addition to what you're already doing, right? Don't completely scratch the regional or national tenant off your list. Just, set aside 3,000 square feet for some micro units. It adds diversity to your offering. The other thing is, obviously, you've got more leases to manage, more tenants to deal with, more personalities. So, there can be cons there. But I have found that as long as you pick the right tenants on the front end, that food hall is fairly low maintenance on my part.
That's great. Really, really good advice. And we're talking about, national and regional tenants. Are you seeing any regional trends to keep in mind when seeking these micro unit opportunities?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, you want to get down specifically into the neighborhoods, right? Like I wouldn't say, hey, let's go pick a region. We'll do this anywhere. It's really within the neighborhoods. The first one, the office building that we did, one of the reasons that it did so well, it was in a predominantly Latino neighborhood that had a bunch of older 1980s Class C office space. And so I saw a potential for, renting out space that was much nicer, fully renovated at the same price as some of these other spaces out there to mostly Latino businesses. And that's what we ended up getting, was a majority of that space. And so I think you really have to drive in on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, because that concept might not do too well in a central business district where there aren't people living in the neighborhood, right? It's not a huge commute driving platform, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. So if you're newer to the CRE space, what's your best advice for how to learn about your neighborhood, right? Or your local neighborhood to kind of understand these micro trends?
Yeah, I mean, spend as much time in that neighborhood as you possibly can. When I first moved to East Nashville, I walked up and down every single street here. Now, that took a lot of time, and I could have gone and driven them. But the amount of things that you'll see and notice just by walking that you would never see driving a car or even riding a bike, it's pretty amazing. And so, I just, put on a podcast and would walk up a few streets a day, and then I'd pick up where I left off the next day, and until I had seen the whole neighborhood. And it helped me really get a feel for what's going on. And then, of course, I immersed myself into the business community with, by joining the merchants associations and the Chamber of Commerce on this side of town, and just sitting down and meeting with everybody. That way I could really learn what's going on in the neighborhood and where there's a gap that I could potentially fill.
Really, really smart. What would you say makes Nashville or even East Nashville such a good place for these projects? What trends are you seeing in your neighborhood at large?
Yeah, so let's dive more specifically into East Nashville. That side of town is the artsy, hip, cool side of town. It still has a lot of the original Nashville flavor. It hasn't been overly, it hasn't been taken over too much by corporate entities. And so it still has a lot of that support local kind of neighborhood, right? So when you've got a neighborhood that's like that, I mean, we just got our first Starbucks in the past year or two, right? Like, which is pretty wild. I mean, we're right outside of downtown Nashville, but that neighborhood has been, and it's one of the largest neighborhoods in Nashville. It's just hardcore support local. And so, a lot of the bigger brands have been scared of that for a while, and now they're starting to kind of revisit it today. But, I think it's the neighborhoods that haven't been overly developed to a point where the small business community no longer exists there.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, I know, as we touched on just briefly earlier, marketing and branding is so important to your business. So I'd love to pivot a little bit more into your perspective on that. As many of our listeners may know, and will obviously know after this episode, you're one of the most recognized CRE brands on YouTube, largely thanks to your focus on educational content. So sounds like pretty early on you started to decide creating these videos, but can you walk us through that a little bit and, what you're looking to do next?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I mean, I fell into the branding side of things completely by accident. I have never liked shaving, and so I always had stubble. And then, this was probably 2014. I decided to grow my beard. I'd never done it. So I decided to grow my beard out in October for a lumberjack Halloween outfit. And, I ended up kind of liking it, keeping it. And then what I realized over the next few months is that every single commercial real estate event that I went to, even though I wasn't a big broker, people recognized me and knew me because I stood out from everybody else. I was the only guy that wasn't clean. I mean, keep in mind, this is 2014. Sure. It's totally different today, but I was the only guy that wasn't clean shaven. And, I had a well-kept beard and, people just started to notice that. And so I kind of realized like, oh, this is kind of becoming a brand. And then I started diving further into Instagram and seeing what could be done there. Again, like I had been watching residential real estate agents for the longest time, and they were killing it on Instagram, showing off properties and showing the behind the scenes. And, what I noticed was that the most successful ones were not pitching you on every single post. That's what so many people get wrong in social media. It's always, hey, look at this listing. Hey, come buy this from me. Hey, come work with me. I want to represent you. Nobody cares. They don't want to follow that. They don't want to follow you to just advertise to them. They want to see something cool. Show them something that they would never normally see. Show them the inside of that warehouse. Show them the inside of that historic building downtown. Take them on tours of these properties. Tell them what's going on with the buildings. And so that's what I did. I just kind of did a behind the scenes. And that was really interesting because I picked up a big following fast. This was before Instagram was really big. And realized that, I started getting investors that were professional athletes.
Wow.
And I didn't, at first I was like, I feel like that's fake. That doesn't seem real to me. I'm just posting pictures on Instagram and now these guys want to come do deals with me. And then, that led to, in 2020, I started the YouTube channel. And since 2013, since I first got started, I had wanted to teach other people how to do commercial real estate because back then there were 2 podcasts to listen to. One of them had stopped recording like a year before. Jeez. So I ran through all of those episodes so fast. There were a handful of books on Amazon and 0 YouTube videos. And of course, being a young broker at a development firm, none of the other brokers want to show you how to do anything because they just see you as potential competition. Right. So it was very frustrating for my first 2 or 3 years trying to learn how this business works. And so I always kind of told myself, okay, well, once I know enough about what's going on here, I'm going to find a way to teach it to other people. And, that started off as becoming a board member for the real estate investors in Nashville and just teaching classes there. And then, like I said, when the pandemic hit, I had nothing else to do. I was just sitting in my office for 12 to 15 hours a day. At first, like cold calling people off of LinkedIn. Hey, want to do a deal in Nashville? Yes, we do want to do a deal in Nashville, but we need to wait about 6 to 12 months to see what's going to happen. I mean, I had hundreds of phone calls that were just like that. And so I said, all right, well, I'm going to keep myself productive. And I started the YouTube channel. And now we're, I guess, over 350 videos in. on how to, buy, sell, lease, invest, develop commercial real estate. And it's been a lot of fun. And we get the overwhelming majority of our deals now from YouTube, which is not something that I had anticipated. But it's been a pretty cool outcome.
And so you have the videos on YouTube, right? How are most of these deals that are getting done? How are they reaching out to you? Sending you a message, chat?
Yep. They'll comment on the videos, or my email address is in all the video descriptions. They'll just email me directly or find my website and come work with me. It's really neat. It's really, we're a small boutique brokerage firm. When I first started that, it was me and a junior broker. Now I've got, 6 agents that work for me. And it was we just focused almost exclusively on East Nashville because it was big enough for us to have enough business to more than enough to know what to do with. And now we're on a national scale. We're representing investors all over the country. We've got some out of Canada and Australia, all because of YouTube, because it just has this global reach. Teaching you how to invest in commercial real estate is the same in Tennessee as it is in, New York or California. Most of the principles are the exact same. So it's been interesting to see how that has changed our audience.
I love that. And so when we were talking earlier on our prep call, you explained how, most brokers are getting it wrong, right? They're marketers, not salespeople. Can you expand a little bit on that for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. They're salespeople, not marketers. And what I mean by that is, no, totally fine. So, what I mean by that is yes, we're sales. We're in sales, right? Like we all have a product to sell. But if you're cold calling on a buyer and 30 other, brokers are cold calling on that buyer, there's nothing that differentiates you whatsoever. But if you're out there creating the content, putting the information out there, sharing it with your audience and being consistent about it, those people will find you and they'll reach out to you and they'll want to work with you. It's a totally different way of doing business. I don't have to call somebody and convince them to work with me. They call me and want to convince me to work with them. And it's completely changed the way that we do business. And honestly, it's a lot nicer. I don't want to have to sit and cold call all day, right? Who wants to do that? It's incredibly effective, but it's a lot of work. And so, finding and fine tuning your marketing skills is a great way to grow in a totally different way. People want the information. They want to get to know you. That's what I've realized about the podcast. I'll have investors reach out that'll say, I've been following you for 2 years on your podcast. Wow. And I look back and I'm like, they probably consumed like 1,500 hours of podcasts before they called me. But, I'm in their ear 45 minutes a day and they feel like they get to know me. And so it's just a totally different sales pitch when you work with clients like that.
Absolutely. So for, I think there's a lot of people looking to expand their content, right? Or how do I get started on that? Can you walk us through, how do you choose your topics? And for those that are newer to this space, how do you put together good content?
Yeah. So the way that I choose my topics today is very different from when I first got started. Today, it's more of, what are people commenting on my Instagram, YouTube, the podcast stuff? Where am I getting questions? What questions are people asking on the content that I'm putting out there? Because clearly I haven't answered that. So then we'll go and kind of create content around that. But, a lot of brokers or investors or developers, they're getting the same questions through the emails or just in day-to-day interactions with their clients. Like, hey, what does triple net mean? Okay, well, why don't you go do a 2 to 3 minute video on what does triple net mean? There are so many questions that we get on a day-to-day basis, and we are so ingrained in the culture of commercial real estate that we don't think anything of it. But you've got a specialized knowledge that no one else knows about. If you're a self-storage broker, go out there and start making videos on how to invest in self-storage properties, because then you're going to start getting a whole bunch of people that are calling you, trying to figure out how they can work with you to buy self-storage investments. So, the teaching people how to do something is one of the best things. Look, we've got better technology in our pockets with an iPhone today than we've ever had before. The video quality that you can get out of that, you can live stream on it, you can record videos, you can take pictures, you can post them on your grid, you can post them on your stories, you can, do pretty much anything with them. I think just pick a lane, right? There's so many different types of content that you can do. whatever you enjoy the most. If you're really good at writing, you don't really want to talk in front of a camera, go start a blog and just write a blog post once a week and be consistent about it. Put really good information out there, start a newsletter and start distributing it to that newsletter. If you want to be on camera, you can start off with your iPhone, recording videos on your iPhone before, having to invest in thousands of dollars of camera equipment. If social media is your game, just learn the best times to post and when to do it. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can get started.
I love that. So we're talking a little bit about getting started. So for brokers or investors that are thinking about branding themselves, right? What are some of the essential building blocks for building brand trust?
Yeah. So brand trust is very delicate to build, right? Because you want to make sure that you are the expert on whatever you're talking about, right? And so, part of my brand is like, look, I don't know everything about everything, and I'll tell you that, but I'll go figure it out and I'll answer your question. I mean, I'm a generalist, right? I know that there are guys out there that know more about self-storage than I ever will. There's somebody out there that knows more about hotels than I ever will. I'm just going to share my experience in that industry with you. And that's something unique to you that no one else has, right? That you can go share with your audience. And the more that people get to know how knowledgeable you are around the topic that you're talking about, and the more likable you are, the more of your personality that you show, the easier that trust will be. And it's also a volume of content that you have to get out there, right? You can't just post one video and all of a sudden people trust you.
Right.
I mean, I've been doing the YouTube channel for 3 years now, almost 4. And it wasn't until last year that I really started getting that brand recognition, brand trust, where people were asking me to come speak at conferences. And you think about that. I mean, it was probably over 200 videos by the time that I got to that point. So, it just takes time, dedication. And, the thing that I really urge people, if they're interested in starting a podcast or a YouTube channel or a blog, don't look at it for the first year. Don't look at the analytics. Don't worry about the traffic. Just consistently produce one piece of content a week that is unique to you for 1 year, and then reevaluate if it's worth continuing on. It takes at least 1 year for you to see any traction because you're competing with all these other podcasts, all these other blogs. And, you think about it like Google has to know that your website has good information about commercial real estate in order for it to start showing it to other people. So you've got to show Google that you know what you're talking about. Same with the podcast, same with YouTube, all that stuff.
That's really, really good feedback. So after your first year, assess what would be a strategy for you to, I think maybe you get to a year and then, I don't have that many views. Maybe this isn't working. What did you do to kind of keep persevering? Was it really just your love of education that kept pushing you through, or what advice could you give to some of our listeners on, keeping that momentum?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I still struggle with that today, right? Because we're creating this content in, a relatively dark room, no windows, usually by myself or me and my videographer. And it's not like I have an audience for every single thing that I do, right? It's, we're creating a video, uploading it to YouTube, and then we're done, and of course I'll interact with comments and, you see views coming in and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But the comments that come in are what keep you going. Right. Like, in that first year, I would have somebody post, on a video every now and then, like, this is amazing content. Thank you so much. Like, this helped me so much. I couldn't find anything else out there like this. And that's just what I kept having drive me, because I thought, okay, well, cool. It helped one person. And if that one person was willing to post about it, it probably helped 2 other people. Right. So that kept me going for a while. And then, once you start getting recognized at industry events or you start getting asked to speak at events, that's when it really starts to feel good, because then you get to go meet people that watch your videos or listen to your podcast. Again, we're doing it in a studio by ourselves. We don't know what it's really like out there. And it's really cool to see that, it's helping other people. So, the monetization side apart, that's what kept me going. And of course, you'll have clients that start to call in, right? I mean, if you've niched down enough, let's say that you're the hotel broker. No one else is creating super in-depth content on hotels and hotels as an investment. Somebody that goes to Google and searches, how to buy a boutique hotel, you're the one they're going to call. So as long as you're very specific in the type of content you're putting out there, you're probably going to get business out of it. I mean, just make sure the video is as high quality as you possibly can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be out there. You'll figure that out along the way. If you go back and watch my first video on YouTube compared to the quality that we're putting out today, it is horrendous. And of course it has like 130 or 140,000 views. So I'm like, of course, that's the one video that everybody keeps watching.
You have to start somewhere, of course.
Yeah, exactly. But that's, I leave it up because it's a really great example of like, that first video was me in my office against a white wall with a lapel mic recording from an iPhone. That's all it was. And, it's got 130,000 views.
That's really, really cool. Well, speaking of content, right, since education is such a key, role in what you're putting out there today, what are some key topics that you've been focusing on lately, especially with the macroeconomic climate? What's important to you right now?
I mean, we're right now building out all of the content that we're going to do over the next 3 to 4 months. And it's all about real estate investing in 2024, considering where interest rates are, where the economic environment is. We've been talking a lot about industrial and flex space because that's what I'm most interested in right now, to be honest. Like, that's probably what we're going to be buying the most of over the next 12 to 18 months. So I'm doing research on it. I'm talking to more people about it. And therefore it's just at the front of my mind, like, hey, let's talk about, industrial outdoor storage and whatever else. So, everything else is just, what would I have wanted to see when I was first getting started that it doesn't exist out there. So we started a brokers roundtable. I've got 3 other brokers that join me on a live stream every couple of weeks to just talk about what's going on in the brokerage market. I've got an investors roundtable where I've got 3 investors from around the country that come in and we just talk about what we're seeing from the investment side of things. We're talking about starting a developers roundtable. I've got to find 3 developers that have a schedule that can permit that, which is kind of tough. But, it's, again, the perspectives that I wish we could have seen when I was getting started. And it's just more approachable, right? It's not this, heavy institutional report that we're just reading. It's kind of fun. It's like, no, like, we are in the trenches. Here's what we are experiencing right now. And so, that's kind of the stuff that we're doing. We're doing a lot of live streaming. As you can see, I'm kind of in my broadcasting studio now. We haven't fully finished it out. We've been working on this for the past week, 2 weeks. We're getting there. So hopefully we'll be live streaming 5 to 7 days a week.
That's incredible. So speaking about right now, right, you're talking about early 2024, investing. What are some principles that you would share with our listeners that, no matter what's going on in the market, are kind of tried and true?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that anybody can do, whether you're a broker or an investor right now, is brush up on your seller financing skills, because that is the one way to continue to get good deals done in a market like this. Let's be honest. I mean, a lot of these sellers don't know what they're going to do with the cash. They don't really have a good investment for them to go roll it into, or the chances of them finding something are pretty slim. So one way for them to continue making money on their money is to seller finance it to you. And, we've got a deal that we're negotiating right now. It's a small one. It's $900,000. And we're going to bring $400,000 down. It's a 30-unit self-storage facility with 6,000 square feet of flex, but it sits on 10 or 11 acres. So we can build another 180 self-storage units and 40,000 square feet of flex. But we got the seller to seller finance $500,000 at 5% interest only for 5 years. So, and he's happy as can be, because he's going to make another $125,000 over the next 5 years. He doesn't have to worry about what he's going to do with that cash because he's already making money on it. We don't have to go to a bank. The debt terms are far better than anything we could find in the market. So, I'm talking to brokers from multiple different companies, as well as in my own firm, where it's, how do we get deals done today? And it's all about seller financing, because leverage, banks are killing deals left and right. Financing is just really tough right now.
That's really, really great advice. So would you say now is a good time to join the CRE industry?
Oh, absolutely. I think now's the best time to join the commercial real estate industry that we've seen in probably the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Really?
I mean, that's always the funny thing to me from the people that are outside of our industry is, Nashville is so hot right now. You guys must be killing it. It's like, yeah, I mean, we are, but you got to realize how much work we're having to do to get any deals done. Like the amount of properties on the market is the lowest it's ever been.
Right.
The cap rates are the lowest they've ever been. Interest rate is the highest it's ever. I mean, it's tough to get deals done when you're in a really hot market because there's so much competition out there. Whereas today, we're going to start to see that fall off. There's going to be a lot more properties coming on the market. I think that the opportunity is abundant for the people that are willing to get out there and get creative and work on it. So yeah, I think it's hands down the best opportunity we've seen, at least since, probably 2017, maybe.
Love that. Awesome. Really great advice. So, given your specialized background and your expertise, I'd love to ask you a few rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So first question, if you were given $50 million today and you had to invest it immediately, what's your go-to asset, location, and why?
Ooh, if I had, I have to invest $50 million
right away.
I mean, honestly, I would just go pay cash for a Walgreens portfolio. I mean, I know that that's so boring and probably the exact opposite of what anyone here would think. But look, if $50 million falls out of the sky and I can invest that on some of the best corners in the United States at a 4 or 5% cap rate, I mean, you're collecting an insane amount of money per year on real estate that's appreciating. That's a no-brainer.
There you go. I like it. Super quick and to the point. All right. Second question, what's the number one best way to gain market exposure for a property or an investment?
Oh, number one best way to gain exposure. I think you've got to find your audience, figure out where it is, right? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram, Twitter, TikTok? I mean, I think whatever it is, just go out, build your audience and do that. I mean, we have built up a pretty insane marketing platform because of YouTube. Like we'll go through and I will vlog walking through the investment and showing it off, kind of like what Ryan Serhant does on the residential side. Just show it off, talk about it, and sometimes just having that visual walkthrough is all it takes to get a property sold.
That's awesome. Are you using hashtags? How are you targeting, the audience?
Yeah, I mean, like on Instagram, I'll use some more niche hashtags. YouTube, it's all about the thumbnail and the title. Twitter, I think just hashtag RETwit is the only hashtag you really need to use. TikTok is a total mess. I have no idea if hashtags work on that platform.
Are you using TikTok?
I mean, yes, I'm not dancing. Unfortunately, I know I probably should be, but we are creating shorts for YouTube, for Instagram primarily because I've got a very large Instagram following. And so they perform really well on there. And since YouTube shorts and TikTok are the exact same thing, we just syndicate it out to those platforms. Makes sense. It does okay, but it's getting exposure.
That's great. So maybe it's one of these that you just mentioned. Favorite tool or software that you use on the job?
Oh, hands down YouTube. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's just what it has done for getting us out in front of a global audience is really interesting because I think only like 92 or 93% of my audience is actually from the United States. There's a good chunk from Canada, United Kingdom, India. It's really interesting to see how far of a reach it goes. And, 93%, or I mean, 7% sounds pretty low until you start to look back on like we had 700,000 views in the last year. So, I mean, that's what, 40,000 views from other countries. It's pretty interesting.
For sure. What's the most common misconception about your job or the industry?
Oh, that commercial real estate is this incredibly easy thing where you just make a ton of money. I mean, it's funny. Like I feel like some of my friends think that we're just, flying around on private jets, like handshaking deals and making millions. And, I think in some cases that's probably true, but a lot of it's, really boring. Me sitting on a phone.
Yeah. Really
just sitting in my office on a phone call, trying to get a deal to stay together, not even put the deal together, to keep the deal together.
That's really good advice for sure. It's a lot of hard work to get there. So as we wrap up, do you have any parting words that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think, look, if you're looking to grow your business, the best thing that I ever did was find a mentor. And the one thing that I got wrong very early on was that there's one mentor out there that will show me the way. And so I was always focused on finding that one person. And what I realized was that, no, I've got dozens of mentors. I've got a mentor in the hotel space. I've got a mentor in the self-storage space. I've got a mentor in development. I've got a mentor in syndication. There are so many different things that you can learn from different people, and they can all be mentors. So just find people that are doing what you want to do in that specific space and just have them as your mentor for that. But, learning from somebody that's put their hand on the burner is a lot better than touching the hot stove yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What would be some advice you have for if you're just starting off, how to identify or find that mentor?
I think that you've just got to put yourself into a social situation with them multiple times to where y'all can get to know each other without it being some intense, like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Will you mentor me? I mean, nobody wants to do that, right? I don't know you. You don't know me. Like, I'm too busy. But, if you're going to show up to my office with coffee every morning, then yeah, I'll take 15 minutes to just hang out and talk with you. Or, if you're going to show up to my real estate investor breakfast meetups that I have, and you're going to talk to me every week, well, eventually I'm going to get to know you pretty well. Right. So find ways to just be in the same spots that these other people are that you want to be your mentor, and get to know them better. And then start taking them out for lunch, start taking them out for drinks. And it doesn't have to be like a formal mentoring session. Like a lot of my mentoring sessions, I don't drink anymore, but it was always at bars. It's like, hey, can I buy you a drink after work? Let's just catch up and see what's going on. It's very casual approach.
Building the relationship first.
That's exactly it.
Awesome. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. I know you're super busy, so we really appreciate you spending some time with us to sit down with us. Where can everyone find you online if they want to reach out?
Yeah, no, Jessica, I'm happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me on the show. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, never send me an email because I do not respond to them. I respond to every DM on Instagram. So just look my name up, Tyler Cauble. You'll find me there. Or, if you're interested in the YouTube stuff, go check me out under Tyler Cauble as well. Those are probably the two best ways to find
those
me.
DMs, every single one. That's a lot to keep up, I'm sure.
Every single one. Oh yeah. And sometimes I have to batch them because I'll get a bunch, but it's nice because I'm on Instagram for business already. So I don't have to switch between email and something else. It's
easy.
Nice.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that tuned in today. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss out on the next one. Visit go.crexi.com/podcast and sign up to get the next episode delivered straight to your inbox. And of course, you can also subscribe to the Crexi Podcast on your favorite podcast app. And please check out our YouTube channel for video recordings for each episode. Take care and be sure to tune in next time.